Yeah, I had to go to daycare pickup.
Whoo.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning. That's not right. Good evening. I do too many shows. Too many of these shows. For you. No, it's for me and it's for you. And it's for Spags here. Good evening. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Monday Night Football live before lock. We got a good one. And also one where who the hell knows what's going to happen. Justin Herbert's, he's active. The hand looked kind of stiff, but I don't know. It's not his throwing hand. We'll see how it plays out. Hampton and Vidal are both going to be out there. Jalen Hurts has been playing like he has a broken hand on his throwing side. So there's that. There's no Lane Johnson. There's no Jalen Carter. And Spags told me before the show started that he feels like the Eagles are going to be a huge disappointment tonight. So what a better place to start. What's up, brother? How we feeling?
Always glad to be here with you, Lofty. I feel like we have a good time on these shows. So it's not even work at this point, even though I do demand remuneration and compensation for every minute I spend here. But I'm excited for the slate. I do think, it's a low total here. I do think there's a lot of ownership for the Eagles, which I just feel like, it's more to the point. I feel like what I was saying to Lofty before the show is like, whenever people believe in the Eagles, it seems to be this year that they are not going to come through as much. People are off the Eagles. Oh, they're playing the Vikings and no ownership. Oh, that double stack's going to cook that week. But today it's a showdown. You don't have a lot of options about who to play, and you're going to get some Eagles, and you're going to get a lot of Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, which, Lofty, as you know, they're always bound to hit their ceiling in the same game, right, with how they play?
Tell you what, man, I had said to Greg this morning, it is really crazy to see the prices on the Eagles. Like earlier this year, if this game were to take place, Saquon Barkley would have been like 12K. He was 12K against Kansas City in week 2 on a showdown, right? Now he's 9,600. 9,600. AJ Brown was 9,600. He's 9K, right? So he's pretty much been consistent throughout the year. Jalen Hurts in that game was 11-4. He's down to what? What's he at today? Like 10-6. So much of Philly, I'll say it. They're pretty much given the talent level still, because of the total dysfunction on offense, and reports are that Nick Sirianni's had more involvement in the offensive game plan this week. Let's see how far that goes. Because of the dysfunction, they're probably at their floor prices this week.
They are. I mean, and because their offensive coordinator, I mean, this is not fair. I shouldn't even joke about it, 'cause I think it's bullshit, but his house getting egged at 3 a.m. Like, I think that goes a little bit above and beyond. But if ever there were a time to resoundingly respond to the locals turning on you, I guess this would be it. I'm not sure if Sirianni being involved in meetings more is a good thing or bad thing. They probably need Kellen Moore to zoom in. I think that might help him out a little bit more.
Help, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm just not a big believer in this Philadelphia offense. I kind of thought, and this is something where it's not me victory lapping what I got wrong last year, but I thought this was the Saquon we were getting last year, where it's like, all right, if things work out well, if they're playing, crappy run defenses like the Giants, he's going to go well. But the offensive line not giving him that, 3 yards before contact or whatever it was he had last year, the most in football. He's just not the same guy, but certainly in this spot, I mean, can he hit? For sure. I just think the amount of ownership to Hurts and Saquon together, they really eat from the same plate, like the short touchdowns in particular, the rushing upside in general, the pass game pulls from Saquon. I just think one of the easiest things you could try to do to get unique and large field tournaments today is play max one of them. That's my lean. Of course, now that I've said this out loud, they're going to put up 50 points on the Chargers.
They might. I don't know. I'll say this. Number one, the whole egging the house thing. I mean, come on. Real scumbag. And the guy that egged the house, so is he. But that was a joke. I'm saying Petullo is a scumbag. But no,
I'm just nodding along with you. That was a good one.
In all seriousness, though, I don't like that stuff. Like, don't come to the man's house. He's probably got a family. I know it's just eggs, but like, all right, we all think he sucks. I get it. Leave him alone. He'll be gone sooner than later. Plus, like, what's he supposed to do? You take the job, you get an OC, you take the job. Anyone's taking that job. It just so turns out he's no good. But the Eagles, man, the Eagles are a very, very weird team. There's a few other teams in the league that kind of operate similarly to them, where it's like just when you think there's no chance that they can put up a decent performance, and it might not be tonight. Like, they might not have hit rock bottom. They may hit rock bottom tonight, Spags, and then next week, no one wants to play the Eagles, and then they end up being great. Now, to your point, people are playing the Eagles, but that's also because it's a showdown slate. Like, I'm not convinced that if this were a main slate, you'd have a whole lot of exposure going to the Eagles. In fact, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't. So, I don't know. I mean, the alternatives in these spots are you still have Quinyon Mitchell. You still have Cooper DeJean. You still have good linebackers. No Jalen Carter, but the Chargers still have a quarterback with a broken hand, and he still needs to grip the ball. So that isn't me saying, oh, yeah, the Eagles are going to come out and drop 50. No, not at all. It's saying there's really no safe haven on this slate. Like, there's nothing in this game that I look at and I go, oh, you know what? I feel very comfortable. Hell, I'm going to be loading up Quentin Johnston captain lineups. That's how I feel about this slate. I'll have some of that. I may play some Vidal and Hampton lineups. Look, I said earlier in the day, the whole split with the way the odds were seems strange. And maybe I'll just be flat out wrong because Hampton had a rushing yard split that was more than 10 above Vidal. I just looked now. Vidal has a higher rushing yard prop than Hampton. So does that tell you I'm right? No. It tells you what I've been saying the whole day. No one has any fucking clue. And that, to me, is interesting going into a slate like this. It's not about right or wrong. It's about, do we know what the answer is? We don't. And maybe you take a stand on one of these guys.
Yeah, and look, I think you certainly have the dice roll ability for the Chargers side in particular, where you have some unknown quantities and what the workload is going to be for Hampton, for Vidal, and just in terms of target share for the Chargers receivers, like you do have Lad McConkey and Keenan Allen leading the way there, but you can get that big day from Quentin Johnson in a man defense heavy matchup versus Philadelphia. You also could certainly see upside for Oronde Gadsden, though that's going to be well reflected in the ownership. I think for the slate, there definitely is sort of a component of choose your own adventure for it. I just think the ownership for Philly is like really high, and the projections are going to push people more towards Philly dominant builds. So from my perspective, I'm a little more curious about the Chargers side, but certainly here, you play what you want. And one thing that's a little bit of color too, that I don't know, Fluffy, I don't know if you've ever been out to LA for a Philly game. Philly fans travel like crazy to LA. Like, there's a lot of locals, a lot of transplants. But I remember living in LA, I would go out to a bar a couple times. There was like a Philly Rams game or something like that, and it would be packed like to the gills with Eagles fans because they show up in a major way. So you do have a chance here that Philly basically is playing like a home game in a Charger stadium that a few times this year has played more like the opponent's environment more so.
For sure. There's a lot of unknowns here, but I had to put you on full screen for a second. You ever get one of those like sharp boogers at the top of your nose and it starts to tickle it to the point where you're going to start sneezing? I had to rocket that out of there, man. And I didn't want people to have to watch.
No, that's a good way to do that. I wasn't emotionally ready for it, but I saw it was full screen. So I really tried to go to my talking head mode and give you the space you needed to do whatever you do. Now there's stored some lines is what it kind of looked like. Cause you were just like,
no. You understand the sharp ones. They can be tough. Typically
they can be deadly. Yeah. You might not make the show. Yeah.
They can be tough, man. Yeah. Hey, Jackoff is exactly right. He said it's sharp. It is sharp booger season.
Just little icicles hanging out of your nose.
This is why we got the greatest community. People just get it, man. I went to a Phillies game at Petco, and that was sick. And yeah, they travel really well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many like transplants, East Coast transplants on the West Coast. But I remember it really being palpable during Eagles game weekends where it's like, holy shit. Like, one of my favorite bars was off of Santa Monica Pier, and it would just be packed, like really like packed with Eagles fans in a way that, they got money. They're going to go to this game. What else they got to do?
Yeah, man. So here we are. Let's get into it. Glad to have you guys here. As always, take a single second, atone for your sins this evening. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Goes a long way, man. Really does. So thank you for all of that. That's right, Ryan. It will make the eyes water. I'll be sitting here. I don't want to be uncomfortable doing this show. Look, you got to take a piss, and there's 30 minutes left in the show. Figure it out. Sit there and figure it out, but not a sharp booger. Anyway, let's dig into it. I ran the Sims. You know what, Spags? I'm going to run them one more time because let me make sure. Are we updated? I want to run them one more time to give everybody the best and most updated information we have. Perfect. We just had an update. So we'll do that. You and I'll keep talking here. Then I'll throw them up on the screen once we get to that. But Can we talk about the backfield for LA first? I want to start there. You got two guys in the mid to high 7K range, very similarly priced. Vidal's, look, he's been solid in Hampton's stead. And do I think Hampton is the guy? Sure. They drafted him early. They needed a running back. What was it? Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins last year. They didn't exactly have an embarrassment of riches in the backfield, but I can't help but think that there was a time this year where Hampton needed a Najee Harris injury in order to really take full control of that backfield. Now, does he come back and eventually reclaim that backfield entirely after what we've seen from Vidal and then been willing to feed him 25 sometimes carries a game? Maybe he does right away. But after being out 2 calendar months since week 5, I think there's a possibility that it's a split. I think there's a possibility that Vidal gets more carries and more opportunities than Hampton. And I think there's a possibility that Hampton gets a 70-30 split in his favor. So how do we play it knowing what the ownership looks like right now and knowing that the salaries are very similar?
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, I really took my hands off the wheel more for the slate than I usually do because I really think the Eagles to me should win the game on paper going against a QB with a gimpy hand. Like he was doing all shotgun snaps when he hurt his hand last week. Now he had surgery on it. He's playing 6 days later. Like it feels like a spot. It's hard to expect him to have the passing game upside he normally would have, even if, it shouldn't theoretically affect him that much to have your non-throwing hand, have a surgery on it, I guess. But for how it looks like, Philadelphia's just really owned and getting these guys a lot. Sim-wise, getting Hurts captain a ton in your top ROI lineups and also exposure. Saquon coming in a good amount as well, though I was trying to separate them a little bit, get some lineups where it's like max 1 between Hurts and Saquon. But I think the RB situation for Hampton and Vidal is one way to maybe get unique on the slate, especially if you get it, like Lofty mentioned, where Vidal gets the workload more. And it does stand out that on the course of the year now, Hampton took the starting job for a while. Vidal's had it now for almost 2 months, like Lofty mentioned. You got 3.8 red zone opportunities a game compared to 2.4 for Hampton. And that could be because maybe this iteration of the Chargers team, while Hampton was out, maybe they're just in the red zone more. But I think it is sort of an indication that they've had a pretty good level of trust, for Vidal in these high leverage situations, these high value situations. So the projections favor Hampton right now, but with their price tag, I think just trying to get even amounts of these guys, some lineups maybe with both of them, especially if you are playing an Eagles don't show up kind of build. I don't really have a lean. I like Hampton, I think is more talented and the draft capital's there more so, but they both have credible reasons to play and the ownership is a lot lower for Vidal.
A lot lower right now because no one really wants to play Kamani Vidal at that price point when you've got Hampton, the shiny new toy returning to action. Look, I'm a little surprised here that I'm going to, what I'm going to do? Let me pull the Sims up for you guys here and let's do this right now. So let's see if we go 3 uniques. Can we keep it? No. All right. Actually, that's not right. If we go 3 uniques, can we keep it in the positives?
I think so.
This one doesn't. I ran it on 25,000. That's probably why, not 50,000. So let me try it on 2. There we go. All right. Let's see if we're getting any Vidal here. 2%. And Hampton, 16%. See, Hampton's ownership, 25% projected. Vidal at 11%. It's so tough for me because Jalen Carter's out. And is this going to be the key that unlocks the slate? I know on Black Friday, the Bears have a much, much better offensive line when it comes to run blocking, and pass block, just in general, much better, which is amazing because they were one of the worst in the league just last year. Isn't it funny how you can focus on your offensive line and become one of the worst teams to one of the better teams in the league in a matter of one season? Who would have thought?
Yeah.
But Spags, also, Chargers can't really pass block either without Joe Alt, without Slater. And I hear they're going to have just like Herbert lined up or Herbert in the shotgun most of this game. The Bears ran for 281 yards on 47 attempts last week, and Jalen Carter was active. So I do think there is a path here where they do decide to run the football more, and both of these guys get a lot of work. I think there's also a path where, and again, I'm not riding the fence. Don't think I'm trying to just I'm saying this because you're going to have to choose directions that you want to go on a slate like this. So just think about this. There's also a path where Herbert's hand is fine and the guy is just a flat out warrior like we know he is, right? And like they just have a perfectly fine game passing because Makuba's out. The Eagles' secondary safeties are not great. Adoree Jackson is not good. So while you have a handful of great guys in that secondary and good cover linebackers, there's still some weak spots every single week. So I'm going to play some lineups, and I'm going to go double Chargers running back in a couple of them. I'm going to boost Vidal a little bit, probably bring down Hampton a little bit, get even on both of them. And then I'll have some pretty heavy Chargers passing stacks with spots like Quentin Johnston at captain or Ladd McConkey at captain, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think that's a logical way to do it. I mean, look, I see what you're saying about Jalen Carter, and I agree. Like, I think one of the things that stood out, the first game of the year was when you got Carter ruled out at the beginning of the game with the altercation with Dak Prescott, and immediately Javonte Williams hit, and it felt like the middle of the field. They just couldn't really defend anymore. But even with Carter in, the majority of this year, they are still giving up a positive EPA per run play, a 0.03 EPA per rush allowed by the Philadelphia defense. For comparison, the Chargers defense negative 0.03, so they're a little bit closer to where you want to be a good run defense. Philly's not really giving up explosive plays, only a 15% avoided tackle rate, which is towards the lower part of the league. They're not getting into the backfield, only a 14% stuffed run rate, which is one of the worst marks in the league. So I think for Philly, you can see that hit for Hampton or Vidal. My gut would be that you see a little more work for Hampton here, but certainly they both can hit, and Vidal has been, I think, explosive enough, a little bit less so than Hampton, but still credible, I think, in the pass game and the run game. I think really the most appealing build to me is like getting some of these guys, here and there. Projection wise for Vidal, though, it is tough. Like I did 50K lineups in my semi round right here, and I only got Vidal at 8% and none at captain. And certainly if things break a certain way, like if Vidal really holds off Hampton in some way, and he's, maybe earned that with how he's played, it's just not going to be owned at all.
I tell you, with his projection, like you said, even if you boost him, you're still not going to get a lot. Like I just boosted him 30% and got 7% Kamani Vidal.
Yeah. If you had 10%, 15%, it looks like you'll be above the field. I think that's not a crazy number to get to. And, I think really, if you were playing really aggressively and just willing to kind of lose the money, I think you make the case to just swap the ownership and to see what you get with Vidal and how he's played. I'm not doing that myself, but I think that's an interesting game theory play of just, over projecting the guy coming back from injury as opposed to the guy that, crushed, including the last time that he played.
I'm quite frankly, I'm always willing to lose the money.
Me too.
Seriously. Like I'm always willing to lose the money on showdown slates specifically, right? Like you're talking about these showdown slates. You have to be willing to get a little bit weird here. And there's just nobody knows what's going on with Vidal and Hampton, and nobody knows what's going on with Herbert. It's all kind of under wraps. So play that however you want, but I think we gave you the information that's necessary to make those decisions. I want to turn the Spags here and ask about the pass catchers, because you had Chris Williams. Hey, Chris, say, watch it be someone like Oronde Gadsden who no one's talking about. It's always some random that ends up hitting. I'll be honest. I don't think Gadsden's much of a random at all today. As a matter of fact, I think you're probably going to see a decent amount of Gadsden popping up for us. Yeah, I mean, look, he's 30% owned at the flex right now. We got him at 28%. He probably has some captain ownership too. Yeah, 5.6% ownership at captain. That's like seventh most or so, eighth most. Yeah, seventh most on the slate behind all the big dogs. We're getting 5.3% at captain. I personally think it's a pretty brutal matchup for him, but he is good. And they don't really have any other tight ends that they want to throw the football to right now. Fisk is out. Not that that matters a whole lot, but he's out. And I believe I saw Spags that, Conklin is also inactive. So is it just Gadsden and Disley today?
I guess so. I don't know who else is on the depth chart. I mean, our boy Scott Matlock can block as an H-back
that's right.
a little bit. So that's something, but I think if those guys are inactive, that should be it. I mean, I would just push back on the idea of Gadsden being sneaky. I know you said it too, but like he's the highest projected owned receiver for the Chargers. He's the second highest owned player for the Chargers. So if you think Gadsden is sneaky, Chris is a Stokastic avatar and is a member. So like, I presume you have the data. But like, he's not sneaky at all. He's in fact the highest owned Charger. So you're not really, he's cheap. That's the reason. And he's spiked a lot. People I think hold him in more steam than he probably deserves.
I think he's actually very good, but I don't. We're probably saying the same thing, that Gadsden is talented, but he had those like 3 or 4 straight weeks where he was popping off for a tight end, really good numbers. But on this offense, it's just, there's no way that type of stuff is sustainable. He could get it going today, and he's definitely come back down to earth, right? And he's, what is he, 5,800? I'd argue that that is too cheap for Gadsden, but and there's really no other tight ends they're going to throw to, but they do have plenty of other guys. And Trey Harris is still going to play like 50% of snaps. So you have Gadsden. I think he's a perfectly good play. I'm getting with the field both at flex and at captain today. What about the wide receivers between? I mean, is this not one of the most brutal situations to try and diagnose each week? And now you're talking about, I know, by the way, we know it's a broken non-throwing hand, but you still, like, from everything I've read, you still have to grip. I know you have to grip the football, but from everything I've read, it still could be something like they clearly want to prevent any further damage, and they don't want him taking big hits. I was surprised he still had a 19.5 rushing prop, Justin Herbert.
Well, it's one of those things. It's kind of like what happened with Jaden Daniels yesterday, where it's like, if you get the ball out fast, you're usually going to be okay. But in that situation for Jaden, like, he was trying to help out, make a tackle on an interception, just got pancaked, landed on his elbow, and they're like, that's it for the day. So if that happens for Herbert, where he gets put down on his hand, and he's probably, like, at this point, still got stitches in. I don't know how bad the injury was. I broke my wrist once. I had to get a wire put in. I don't know what he's got in his hand, but, like, he's probably got something in there to keep it steady. Like, ultimately, he just needs, like, your left hand, your non-throwing hand is like a guide hand. The same thing in basketball. You're just kind of there to support. So he can pass. I mean, I'm actually curious your thoughts on this, Laffy. Like, do you think people are going to be afraid to play Herbert because of the hand? Because I did put him in some lineups at captain, where I'm like, I don't want to guess in the pass catchers which of them are going to hit at captain. I can play a few with Herbert at captain and play in the assumption that everybody's going to be afraid of playing a QB with a broken hand, as they should be. But I think if he does just play, shotgun snaps, gets the ball out fast, he might have, similar fantasy upside. And like you mentioned, the rushing props, where they would be normally anyway. I think he's an interesting play to lean into today, because I just don't buy that it'll be 51% owned.
I'm for sure leaning into Justin Herbert. Again, though, like, I want to play both sides of the street here. I want to, you don't have, like, if you're playing, look, if you're, a lot of people are like, well, I don't have a big bankroll, like I only play a few lineups. You can max the mini max or the quarter jukebox and still get 150 in. Well, you got the Miller there, or Miller Lite.
Yeah, Miller Lite. It's one of those days. It's Monday night.
I know I may have one. It is an Eagles game. I may have two.
Why not? Maybe go egg some houses after.
But, like, you could play multiple sides of, you could play the narrative in multiple ways here, right? Like, you could play the Eagles defense dominates and Herbert makes mistakes, gets picked off. They sack him a bunch of times. He re-injures his hand and Trey Lance comes in. That's actually not an insane thought. You just said it. It happened with Jaden Daniels yesterday, which makes a lot less sense to bring him back when
he politics to play. I think, like, it sounded like, which good for him doing that.
Look, I'm never going to fault any team for doing that. Like, the quarterback, any player's job is to play football. That's what they get paid for. And I have a lot more respect for them trying to get their way back into a lineup than being like, no, I'll wait till next year. Same with Joe Burrow, right? I respect it. But with the Chargers, if they were 3-9 or whatever, or 3-10, whatever it may be at this point, 3-9, yeah. Would Herbert be playing?
I'd say probably not. I mean, they've called the dogs. It's a different regime now. Harbaugh's a hardo, like, that way. Maybe you would, but I think that they probably call off the dogs. Historically, the team has done that when it doesn't matter. But they're playing for something. I mean, for the Chargers, I don't know the win probabilities, but this feels like a must win for them, right? Or pretty close to it.
I don't want to say must win, because they're 8-4 and the Chiefs are 6-7.
Yeah. The Chiefs are now, well, they can't win the West now, right?
No. The NFL playoff picture, I looked at it earlier today. I think the Chargers, even if they lost, still have a pretty good shot of making, like, they should. So if they lose, they still have a 51% chance of making the playoffs. But the Eagles still have a 93% chance of making the playoffs if they lose. So to your point, yeah, this is still a very big game for the Chargers. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it looks like heading into week 14, they had lower chances of making the playoffs than the Colts and Bills. Colts had a 90% shot going into that game, so they must be a near lock at this point with the East. But yeah, Chargers kind of need the win. I mean, the Colts are going down. It seems like if you're sniffing around Phillip Rivers, the chats have making fun of for a while. You're probably on the way down for sure. But I think they need this win to feel confident about making it because they had only a 61% chance of making it, before this game anyway. And if they win, it goes to 76. And like Lofty mentioned, if they lose, 50 and change.
Looking at the other teams, though, like on the bubble, Colts,
Texans.
Well, Texans are currently in a wild card spot right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm looking at the week 14 probabilities before it's been updated, I guess. So that's
gotcha. Yeah. So Texans are 8-5. That team's rattled off like 5 straight wins, man. They're forced, whatever it is. They're playing good football. That defense is, they're the best in football. Like they're the best.
I feel like well, we talked about it on that Showdown slate too. Like people knew that defense is good, but I feel like they didn't see it on a national stage.
The Bills
it's been the talking point. Yeah, it's been the talking point for like since then, where they're like, this Texans defense, like every talking head is saying that. But I think we were pretty early on being like, this defense is like really fucking killing everybody, and they have been.
And they have been all season, right? It wasn't. You're right. They get on the national stage. They beat the Bills and the Chiefs in prime time, and now it's like, oh, I didn't know who's this Will Anderson fella. He's good, So that Stingley character, he can play. Like, yeah, these guys are really, really good. That hit they put on Rashee Rice yesterday, man, I'm surprised his shoes stayed on. So
yeah. They play like a defensive coach's team. Like, Aaron Glenn and the Jets do not play like that. They play like D'Amico Ryans like wants them to play. And it took a couple years, but like it's really fun to see.
It's awesome. And I actually think it's an enjoyable brand of football. But anyway, back to the Herbert thing. Yeah, I'm going to play it as if Herbert's healthy in a lot of lineups, and I'm going to play it as if he isn't in lineups too. And I'm also going to have, I would assume I'll have a decent amount of Eagles defense, Spags. Let me see. I mean, I would think so, right? At least some.
I like Chargers D a little bit more, and the sim was above the field there. I didn't see what the numbers were on the Eagles.
The thing about the Chargers defense that I'm not in love with, and they are $800 cheaper than the Eagles, so that, that makes me like them a little bit more, is that the Eagles are struggling offensively. They're not a high turnover team at all, though.
No, I mean, Hurts is at a 0.5% interception rate. So, Herbert, as good as he is, he's at 2.1. League averages are up 2.8, 2.9. So, yeah, I mean, Hurts has actually not been messing up. He takes sacks at a good clip, but even then, he's not like Lamar, who's been kind of an atrocity on that front.
He's thrown the fewest interceptions in the league.
Yeah, so that checks out with the rate. And then also, the Chargers are a good EPA defense, like negative EPAs across the board, negative 0.05 EPA per drop back, negative 0.06 EPA per pass. So that's towards the better part of the league. Get a negative rush EPA. They don't really get a ton of pressure, 21% pressure rate. They don't have to blitz to get the pressure to get the positive, only a 19% blitz rate. I think Chargers D is good, but they're not the stuff that you want for fantasy is like a pressure happy defense, like pass deflections. They're not really doing that stuff as much.
Right. Like forced turnovers and, I think Herbert might be fine, or, you might force him into some tough decisions if you can get pressure. When you're shooting the Kobe Dean out of a cannon at Justin Herbert, it could get ugly, right? And Jalen Phillips, while they are not winning every game, has made a difference. The absence of Carter is a big deal, but I think both defenses are fine. And then Cameron Dicker, Jake Elliott, I like both of them too. I was actually surprised the total was as low as it was. And even though Eagles, I understand why it is, but I was still surprised with this game being in LA and not in Philly where it's freezing cold. I thought it'd be a little higher than that. It's not. It's like 41.5. Yeah,
it kind of seems like a playoff football total here. And, two teams that should make the playoffs, it seems, assuming things go relatively well down the stretch. So, yeah, I'm with you. I thought the total would be a little bit higher, but it really hasn't moved in a positive way at all this week either. I think it maybe moved up a half point from this morning. So doesn't seem like a shootout spot, though. I think the projections kind of are playing it like a shootout spot based on how many skill position guys are getting.
Yeah. All right. So then back to the wide receivers. Can you break this down a little bit? If we already talked about Gadsden, but you have McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston. It could be any one of these guys any given week. Yeah. It feels like Quentin Johnston's fallen off, right? It was only 3 games ago that he led the team with double-digit targets. And then you have Trey Harris, who's going to be out there, but hasn't been very involved. I know he caught a touchdown at the goal line against Minnesota a handful of weeks ago, but are there preferences for you here, right? Like if you had to prioritize, you're talking to someone who's building one or two lineups. Is there a way you'd prioritize? And do you have preferred guys at captain as well?
I think McConkey would be the priority based upon the thing that I always try to talk about during these shows. Like the snap volume matters a lot, and being aware of what that is and how that's ebbing and flowing as it goes. And, McConkey's the only receiver, primary receiver who's over 50 snaps. I think Gadsden might have also, let me just check that real fast. I believe Gadsden got 50. No, he got 47. Yeah, so McConkey got 51 last week. Gadsden got 47. Quentin Johnston got 45. Keenan Allen got 40. Keenan Allen's snap count is actually coming up a little bit because he was at one point a couple of weeks ago was playing 18 snaps, 24, then 37, 36 before the bye. So post bye, they decided to get him to in the mix a little bit more. But these guys are all, playing a good amount. I think relative to the matchup, it is a man defense heavy matchup. Your best target earners are going to be Ladd McConkey at 26% target per route run rate. Keenan Allen's then at 24. Quentin Johnston's at 21 and change. Quentin Johnston's run hot on touchdowns in man defense, so maybe he keeps that going. But I think I would favor Ladd as my number one guy. I would go Keenan number two. I personally would put Gadsden last out of, including all the receivers. I think Quentin Johnston, just relative to the matchup and the fact that I think people will be off of him a little bit more than the other guys. I'd like to go there. I wouldn't begrudge anybody feeling differently about, how you rank these guys. But to me, I think Ladd is your clear winner. Keenan, though, he's always earning targets. Just the issue is how much he's on the field. And it seems like he's on the field more after the bye.
Who do you think benefits the most from, because they move these guys around, like Keenan and Ladd move around a lot where Johnston's on the outside like 90% of the time. Does anyone benefit from specific? I know you're not a big like matchups guy, but do you think there's anyone that benefits most from some of the matchups here?
I mean, based on the EPA metrics out wide versus the slot, it is a negative EPA matchup targeting the slot and inline tight ends. Negative 0.06 EPA per target to the slot, negative 0.08 EPA allowed by the Philly defense to inline tight ends. Out wide, it is a positive EPA to running backs also. 0.2 EPA out wide, 0.13 EPA to the running back. So theoretically, your best spots to attack are going to be downfield / outside and short throws to the RB. But, like that might not matter with the volume. Like clearly the Chargers love to pepper the slot on the year. It's 75 slot targets for McConkey, 62 for Keenan. For comparison's sake, like out wide, you have your max target earner is 38 on the year for Quentin Johnston. So, sometimes you get forced volume there and it might not matter. The matchup's not good on paper, but it is inefficient to, go against the Eagles defense in the middle of the field, it seems like.
It has been. It's been actually, as a matter of fact, very, very inefficient to do that. And I'm not surprised by it, right? You get Dean, you have Zach Bond. Those guys have been pretty incredible as far as being able to eliminate pass catchers there. And of course Cooper DeJean as well. So I like the outside a little bit if you can target Adoree Jackson, and I think Quentin Johnston will probably have the most matchup since he's always outside. Do you like Quentin Johnston today? I know you just broke them down in order, but to me, he's somebody that actually does stand out as a pretty fascinating option.
Yeah, I think the ownership is appealing, though it's not, crazily low. He's at 25%, 21%. Keenan is at 27% expected. Ladd's at 28. And like we talked about, Gadsden's a little bit over 30. I think those are fair numbers. Quentin Johnston, in terms of like having the touchdown ceiling, I agree with. The tough part is that the total's not super high. I feel like if we're a little bit higher, I'd probably like Quentin Johnston more, and that might not be a fair way to look at it. But I think with it being a little bit of a lower total, I think the PPR guys, like Ladd and Keenan are better. But I really don't have an issue with Quentin Johnston normally. I mean, he does project better than Keenan, or, at least flat with Keenan, rather. I think mentally I do have a little bit of a block where like I was so stoked to get Keenan Allen for free in best ball. Since then I'm like, Keenan Allen, best receiver in football. Let's get him out there more, boys. But like in reality, like Quentin Johnston has like a touchdown hawk role. Keenan Allen just kind of a pure PPR scam at this point. But some of the chat asked about red zone targets. It's really flat in the red zone. 1.1 per game for Ladd, same for Quentin Johnston. 1.2 in the red zone for Keenan Allen, and also 1.2 for Gadsden. So much like everything else for the team, it's flat across the board, and they all kind of look the same. Which
is surprising, right? Because last year, Quentin Johnston, towards the second half of the season, that guy, I mean, he really dominated a lot of red zone opportunities. or a goal line, end zone opportunity. Sorry. You saw a lot of that out of him. You're just not seeing as much of that this year. So I don't know. I like him. Now, on the other side, though, if you're talking about the Eagles, right? A.J. Brown, 3 straight double-digit target games. I guess the squeaky wheel does get the grease, Spags. It appears that would be the case. And he's been good. He's got, like 4 touchdowns over the last 3 games. He should have a somewhat easier matchup here, but it's still not easy. The Chargers have been good against wide receivers. Between him, Goddard, and Devontae, how do we look at that?
So I think people are really going to be on A.J. Brown, and the ownership doesn't bear it out as much with, 46% or so expected for Brown. Actually, that's the old ownership. Let me make sure. Be about 46% between captain and flex for A.J. Brown. And then for Devontae Smith, you're talking like 40 or so. So you're not really getting a big enough discount. I think A.J. Brown has benefited from the last few matchups. I mean, squeaky wheel thing is part of it, but it has been a lot of man defense heavy teams, which A.J. Brown has always historically been a killer on the year. 33% target rate versus man compared to 27 for Devontae Smith. So like he does pull ahead there. His yards per out run are also appreciably better at 2.4 compared to 1.8 for Devontae Smith. So like the fact it's a zone heavy matchup, I think it's a good time to hop off the A.J. Brown train and try to play Devontae more, try to play Dallas Goedert more. But, a guy getting 3 targets or 3 games in a row, like Lofty just mentioned, over 10 targets after being, vocally bitching about stuff for a while and seemingly them deciding to do that. I think that it's totally valid to chase the ownership on A.J. Brown. To me, though, I think relative to matchup, I'd rather roll the dice more with Devontae and Goddard and see if that's one way to get unique in some of those Philly lineups.
I think I agree. Because why do people do this? One guy will have a couple good games and everyone forgets about Devonta Smith, who's he's still a stud. Like the guy's a stud and he's going to get opportunities. They will take a couple shots downfield towards him. That's a good call. I like that a lot, actually. Would you captain Goddard today? Because I know you'd captain Devonta Smith. I think that's just reasonable that anybody would consider captaining Devonta Smith.
Yeah, I boosted Goddard a little bit, so I got him at a little bit over 5%. I think my final number here when I finish stuff up, it's going to be like closer to 7 or so. But Fields at 3. I think getting 2x of Field on Goddard, to me, that's, again, the kind of stand that you're willing to do as everybody else just tries to carve up the same kind of Hurts Saquon lineups. And that's, a totally credible way to approach things as well. But for me, I'd like to try to roll the dice on less ownership, get to smaller swaths of the field if you can. But Goddard, I think, zone heavy matchup, tight ends tend to benefit there. And, they're playing zone. The Chargers defense 65% of the time. Goddard gets targeted 20% of the time he's running a route versus zone compared to 15 versus man. Very easy for a guy like Goddard to settle in the zone and find some targets. But yeah, I really think the big thing is like A.J. Brown's been great, but it's so easy for it to flip back. And even on the year, A.J. Brown at 7.9 targets a game, Devontae at 7.3, Goddard a totally respectable 5.1. The role's not bad for these guys. It's just that because A.J. Brown's hit recently, people are, like you mentioned, just horse blinders on, and they're like, A.J. Brown's the only play.
Yeah. Would you go to Calcaterra today or any of these other cheap? There aren't really many. You have like Cooper and Calcaterra and stuff like that, but there's not another thing too. And I'm letting you talk a lot right now because I did a lot of this morning as well. And people know what I think. So I think they probably care what you think on top of mine. But I feel like the price points today are as cheap as you're ever going to see for 2 teams like this. I know it's not like, I'm not saying all of the Chargers are dirt cheap, but none of those guys with the way they're utilized, they're going to be 11K at any point unless 2 of them get hurt. Right. And then you have the backfield with 2 guys in there at both active, Hampton and Vidal. But with the Eagles being as cheap as they are, I think it's actually tough to just be able to be like, yeah, I'm going to get real contrarian and just go to a bunch of like Jahan Dotson or a bunch of Calcaterra. I'm not saying you don't end up there, but it sometimes just feels like the kickers are better or you just can go somewhat balanced and it doesn't feel like you have to make these crazy concessions on a slate like this.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way to look at it too. Like I didn't get a crazy amount of Calcaterra, got him at 6%, only in the flex. I don't think he's a captain play, and I usually don't like playing guys like Calcaterra who aren't starters, aren't key rotational players, and aren't likely to get enough routes to have a tangible ceiling. I don't like playing those guys a captain too much, but I wasn't getting it anyway. But I do think like it's a lot of ownership going to Dicker and Jake Elliott. The defenses, to me, I think a little more appealing in ownership, but that might just be kind of splitting hairs because kickers around 30. It looks like both Elliott and Dicker. Defenses around 20 to 25, it seems. But yeah, I think for guys like Calcaterra, I mean, I know Kylan Granson was coming up a little bit this morning. I know Cameron Lotzie was in some top ROI lineups. He comes up a little bit. It's possible that there's so much ownership to kicker and defense that if the kickers just don't get field goals or the defenses just get their asses kicked, that a Shipley, a Darius Cooper, Tank Bigsby barely playing, the great Scott Matlock, those guys can make it perhaps if those kickers and defenses fail. But the Sims and the data seem to love kickers and defense today.
I'm okay with it. I'm not getting away from it. It is a low total, but I also have plenty without that as well. Looking at captains though, and I'll pull the Sims up in just a second here, but Barkley at captain, I know it's been a rough season. You and I talked about it earlier in the show, but I at that price point, the guy played like 93% of snaps last week. They barely used anybody else, and Bigsby's actually been efficient, but they didn't use him. They're not really using anybody, Shipley at this point. So it is also possible that Barkley is just at that price point, gets more than enough volume, finds his way into the end zone once or twice, and you need him at captain.
Yeah, I mean, look, the snap shares, like you just mentioned, are so low. Like Tank played 1 snap last week. Shipley played 4. So that's really not, they're not trying to find the answers by getting away from Saquon. If anything, it seems like they're trying to placate him by stripping those guys' rolls down to absolutely nothing. So pure volume, I get it. I don't think it's a great matchup on paper for him. Like, again, I really think at this point, I think he needs pristine runways to kind of get where he needs to go in terms of pure upside. But if this game is a slog and if it is sort of a defensive kicker heavy matchup, Saquon could score 1 touchdown, give you 80 yards, and he could make it as captain. So I think it's a totally valid play. I didn't fade him or anything. I just tried to get him away from Hurts in most of my lineups if I could.
Then who are your most exposed captains right now? Because I do have a lot of Barkley at captain, and I boosted Devontae Smith a little bit too.
Yeah, Hurts and Barkley are still my top guys, getting about 25% of both of them. So half my lineups will go to the chalk, and then the rest of it boosted Devontae Smith, so getting him around 10 and change. Getting AJ Brown, also similar amounts here, so close to the field's ownership as opposed to what the sim is giving me naturally, which is a little bit more AJ Brown at 16%. Boosted Goddard a little bit. Just kind of took my share of all the Chargers guys, but that's the exposure. The Chargers pass catchers didn't play any running back Chargers at captain. I just don't feel confident enough in that. And even though I'm willing to lose money on playing them in different builds, I just don't think leaning in that hard makes sense for me today because I'm not playing 150, just doing 20 maxes and some spare entries. But I think, more Eagles receivers, I guess, is the main thing for me. And just trying to make sure I'm a little bit above on all the Chargers receivers who are, relevant.
Are you tamping down defensive exposure?
No, I play that straight for the most part. I mean, if Tom or, Stokastic CEO tamps it down, I probably should, given the fact that's how he won, 100K a couple of weeks ago in a showdown, is bumping down defenses to like 0.5 fantasy points, and running the Sims there. There's a tweet about it if you want to dig into the archives and find that. But yeah, I like playing defense here. It honestly, though, it goes against my rule of thumb, which like when everybody's playing defense, you probably shouldn't play defense, play the shootout. But, I think to me, I see there's a real pathway for the Chargers. I think there's certainly a pathway for Eagles as well.
So do I. And if you look at our exposures right here, Spags, pulling this up again. If you pull up, so filter this. Actually, let me do this real quick. Look at 150 lineups. Go to exposures. Go to flex. Yeah, we got 30% Chargers in there, which, okay. 25% Eagles. One thing I noticed, though, and this is why, I prefer to use uniques. If you go with 0 uniques here and run 150 and you go to the flex, Chargers are going to come up even more. Eagles are going to come up even more because a lot of the highest simmed ROI lineups are Chargers and Eagles. Once you smooth that out a little bit, you start to get less of them, right? And I think that's one way to approach a slate like this is use the uniques like Tom does. And yes, like he said, he'll bring down the projection on defenses a little bit sometimes, but you can definitely just run like 3 uniques on a 50,000 lineup set in the contest generator, and it will smooth that out a lot more than if you run it on no uniques, because a lot of times those just rise to the top because those are the type of lineups that are going to sim really, really well because most people aren't playing those type of builds. They're not going to be duped either.
Yeah, that's a smart way to do that. Yeah, the unique stuff, I think I know you talk about a lot in your streams, but if you are new to the Sims, using that intelligently, using that where you're still making sure you get positive ROI lineups. Again, I think Tom said he takes his first 100 being 3 uniques and his next 50 are 2 uniques. There's ways to do that. Obviously, you don't have to follow it to the gospel, but that's a good way to handle the exposure stuff. If you feel like you're a little bit overexposed to the Sim faves.
Did you get all your lineups in?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, good. Did you guys get your lineups in? Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Oklahoma, AJ Brown's my single entry captain. Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. By the way, if you guys have questions, fire away, my friends. Also, Greg got a little promo going on for Portfolio EV. He's been killing it this season. And recently we've had a ton of awesome screen. There's a plus 10,000 on the month of November. Monster screenshots coming in. Using, of course, the Portfolio EV tools. You guys have heard me talk about these a ton. If you are interested, 50% off with the promo code 200. That's it, 200. Links in the description. The cool thing about this is you already get a week free, which means that you can get a week free, and then your month or week is 50% off after that. Essentially, we're finding the edge for you. For all you 9-to-5ers out there, right? For all you who don't have time to research, for all of you who are struggling betting right now, you have definitive edges that you find within Portfolio EV. All of the results are back tested as well, right? So you can go into the Portfolio lab and you can see which of these type of markets have been profitable long-term with all of the bets that we've recommended that are tracked, right? So you have a screen where all of your bets pop up. You can bet up to 20 at a time, auto load them straight into your bet slip. And then you can see what markets are doing well so you know what's been profitable before you even bet it. For any of you guys out there, particularly those of you who have been losing and have healthy sportsbooks accounts, man, there's no better time to take advantage of it. Because, look, eventually you get limited betting anywhere if you're getting closing line value and you're winning, right? But when you have healthy accounts, they won't flag you for a very long time. And you can dig yourself out of that hole, man. So link down there. Whether you're betting, and the great thing is I don't research any NBA bets. I just use Portfolio EV. I just bet it using Portfolio EV. That's it. No time. I have notifications set up on my phone. Bing, bang, boom, we're in. That's all you got to do. So code is 200. Links in the description. 50% off anything, weekly or monthly. And your first week is already free. So check it out if you haven't done so yet. It's only good until Greg's bankroll 2X's into 200. So that could be tonight. There's a very good possibility that's tonight and the code is gone tomorrow. Keep that in mind while you're watching the game and you say, you know what? I've been on the fence. It might be time to do it. Also, Spags, want to answer some questions. And we will have you help me answer. Is Disley in? Yeah, Disley's in, right? Yes, because what's his name's out. Conklin's out, Disley's in.
Yeah.
Unless I got it backwards.
Yeah, Disley's not coming up in the projections, but I think he's in.
No, but he's in. I'll make sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, because I don't want to misquote it, but he didn't come up for me at all in the sim, so I'm just making sure that he's actually in.
Yeah, because Fisk is on IR. Conklin is out. Disley's not on the injury report. He's not on the.
No Fisk or Conklin. You're right.
Yep.
So Disley, Gadsden, active tight ends with Matlock as the fullback / wing tight end.
How do you select and favorite 100 with 2 uniques and then 50 with 3 uniques without getting duplicated? You take that to an Excel sheet, and the easiest way without me explaining it, literally just jump into ChatGPT and ask how to deduplicate lineups within Excel. That'll be the easiest way you could do it. It doesn't take long. It's a simple process. But that without me, because we only have like 5 minutes left, that would be the way to do it. Or you just go in and you can take, you could just filter in simulated ROI after you favorite the 100 and remove them. Remove any lineups above that simmed ROI. So then you just have the ones below it, and then you could run those with 3 uniques or 2 uniques or something like that. That would be another way to try and get that done. Is Hampton in? Yes, Hampton's in. We gave our thoughts on that earlier. It's all over the map. It's all over the map. So
you could also do the uniques thing through the sim interface, I think, too, where if you just select 100, like you go to quick favorite, select 100 with 3 uniques, then you go 2 uniques and select 50, and I think you're going to get it.
Well, he doesn't want any being duped. That was the problem.
Well, because it's in the sim interface, so it won't dupe. It'll just select the next batch.
Yeah, right. No. But he doesn't want him to run into the negatives.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you're trying, I think what he's saying is if you're trying to do 150 at 3 uniques and it's running you into the negatives, how do you keep it from doing that? You could also just like run a new pool. So run a new one and then put it into Excel with however many unique and deduplicate them.
Yeah, I think if you put the unique count in, because I'm doing it right now to make sure it's working correctly. If you select your top 100 with 3 uniques, then select your favorite top 50 with 2 uniques, it will. Yeah, it gave me no negative ROIs, and
okay.
I'm getting.
There you go. Those. I will say that is the way Tom, our CEO, does it. The way I was explaining. So that's
he used Excel for sorting for everything, right?
Yeah, that's the only, and because I did a thread the other day and he was giving, I asked him for pointers to give to the people. And that was one of the things, like go into Excel, simple process and do it that way. So
a lot of ways to skin a cat always.
Yep. So Tex, I think if you put in that much thought of how to do it, no, I mean, I don't know. Not if you're winning, right?
Yeah, and lineup selection, from a large swath of lineups where you have a bunch of positive ROIs to select from. Finding unique ways to do that while still getting good lineups is an important thing. And again, I think you could do a good amount of stuff through the sim interface that does work well, but Excel is another level beyond if you know what you're doing and can hop in and not fuck it up.
Right. You can still do everything within the sims as well. You don't have to go crazy for sure. But anyway, and Kyle said you're right as well. And Kyle's won a bunch of money using the sims. So there you go. I think Kyle's had like multi 50 and hundreds. And yeah, that's what Mr. J Wheel was saying as well. So anyway, anyone we haven't talked about yet? We got a couple minutes to go here. I think we pretty much covered the important spots. I mean, I guess you could mention like a Trey Harris or something, but he's just in the, of course you could mention a Scott Matlock. I got to bet him the score.
You do it live on the air here so Scott Matlock, it was funny. I was trying to check his snap count, and Trey Harris did play 34 snaps last week, which I wasn't aware was that high.
Yeah.
It's a pretty decent amount of snaps for a guy who's been pretty disappointing, but he's out there. But Matlock is now not even on the Fantasy Pro snap count because I think he's not playing enough to qualify. So it made me kind of sad because I was like, oh, how much did Matlock play? So I could reference this, and I don't know how many snaps he's played because he's off the sheet.
That's actually very disappointing.
I know. No faith in our gigantic ginger boy.
He didn't play last week.
No.
I don't think I can bet him.
Oh, that's sad.
It's very sad.
It's sad for your bankroll, sad for
although where I'm looking now has him a defensive tackle. They're not putting his snap. I'll bet it. Ghetto Farmer Laffy losing out on Matlock CLV. No, it's probably the opposite, Ghetto Farmer boy. He's as the day goes on, his odds probably move in the opposite direction. They did. He was 28-1. He's 3,000. He's 30-1 now. All right, ready? Scott Matlock first touchdown score. 100-1, Spags. Let's do it.
Ooh. Put in $1,000 and then. Then you'll really get the full payout there.
You'll never see me on the show again. All right, 10 to win 1,000. We're locked in, baby. Let's go. I'd love for people to just see the betting history and be like, "This guy, he's betting Scott Matlock. Why? What is he
your account pure? The books are like, this guy can't be sharp. He keeps betting this gigantic ginger idiot.
It's actually
good fucking play,
dude. That's actually smart. Yeah, you put some small bets on guys like Scott Matlock every single week, and they're like, you know what? We're gonna reverse his limits. We're gonna give him reverse limits, as a matter of fact, and just let him bet whatever he wants. Deepak, appreciate y'all on Saturday and Sunday. Thanks, man. Thoughts on Disley? Yeah, look, Spags, I don't think he's gonna get owned. He should play a little bit. The truth is, if it's really just Gadsden and Disley out there, I don't know. They haven't been playing Disley. It's hard to have much confidence at all in him. But if you're looking for the most insane dart throw for a guy that might see the field a little bit with Fisk out and Conklin out, it probably would be Disley, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Disley, so it seems like between Fisk and Conklin, they're vacating about 28 snaps. So if you assume those were all snaps, because Disley was out last week, if you assume those were all snaps with Gadsden on the field or where they wanted to play somebody else besides him, Disley can theoretically pick up, 25 or so. How much that carries you, I don't know. But he is, do you theoretically leverage against a very highly owned player? I just know how much practically he'll be good leverage against that.
Very sorry, guys. The chat was flying and I missed some of these. Willie chopped the mini max last night. Appreciate y'all. Awesome, man. Congrats. Goody. The run game for the Chargers has to be hampered. I don't see Herbert handing off with the repaired hand, so everything has to funnel left. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're gonna scheme up. I really don't.
No, you could hand the ball this way. He's gonna run out of shotgun, so like you can go either side. That shouldn't be an issue.
Cully, Disley a bad idea is only other tight end for act. All right, we just answered that one. No, we talked about him earlier in the show. It's just a tough spot. Sorry, Big Kev. Any way to see play action target percentage for LA for the Chargers?
I don't have the numbers on who gets targeted the most, but they run play action 8.4 times a game to a dead flat 0 EPA. So nothing too special in play action. But that's actually a fair question because Herbert not being under center as much, they're probably, somebody pointed out this morning, and that checks out from what I know. Theoretically, you won't get as much play action from being in shotgun because it's not as effective. So not being under center, you might see less play action, but it's only 8 plays a game. It doesn't really matter that much.
All right, man. Pleasure as always, brother. Thank you guys for hanging out. And we'll see you back here. What's today? Monday? Tomorrow, Tuesday, first look show, baby, week 15. That means no more bye weeks. So these slates are going to get bigger. Everything's going to get even crazier somehow. And I hope you guys have a great night. Make sure you're rocking the Stokastic avatar. If you're not rocking the Stokastic avatar, link down there, stokastic.com/HOF. All of these beauties will get you a free month, multiple months, all access, the beautiful ring in the display case commemorating your big wins. So long as you tweet us, it's Stokastic HOF with your wins, top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more when it happens. And it's going to happen tonight. I sense it, Spags. We got a big one coming tonight.
I hope so. I mean, people have been winning so much lately. I'm curious to see if that could possibly keep up. So now it's your guys' challenge to live up to that hype. But, guys like Deepak, guys like Morgan in the chat, we've got multiple million maker winners hanging out here. And, could it be you tonight? I hope. I guess you can't win $1 million no matter what tonight. It can't be you tonight, but you could win a lot of money tonight.
You can win a lot.
Get things right. Yeah.
Nathan, here's a good way to end it. I got Matt Lockett captain. Don't do that. We'll see you guys back here for the next one. Bye-bye.